Hello, my loves. I want to talk to you about my experience working with ancestors this year and the invitation that's coming through very strongly from the ancestors as we rapidly approach the Samhain celebration and give you some insight into some of the blocks that we have around connecting with our ancestors, our ancestral lineages, and how you might be able to open that doorway for yourself, even if you don't know who your ancestors are per se. So if that sounds interesting to you, then let's dive in together. So I want to preface this by saying I am creating this video from the lens of a solitary practicing witch, as a psychic who spends time and their life purpose of delivering messages from the veil, from across the veil into your world, and someone who has spent a lot of time this year connecting my clients with their ancestors via the Akashic records. So everything I'm about to share is personal experience. Please take what resonates and leave what doesn't, and do research far beyond just me so that you can get a well-rounded picture of what connecting with your ancestors might look like for you. This is general information and offering you up the tools that I have, as well as the message that is coming through for the Leanne Aligned Collective from the collective of ancestors as of late, because if I don't share this, they're never going to leave me alone. I've been receiving this message for weeks and they're like, you're going to share this. And I'm like, okay. So that's why we're here today. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer. So a little bit of background about, they're like, no. We're doing the message first. Okay. Let's just all take a moment to take a deep breath together, if you would like to join me. I'm just going to take a moment to close my eyes, to center my energy, to ground into this moment. Taking a deep inhale in, and an exhale out. Deep inhale in, exhale out. One more time, deep breath in. Deep exhale out. Let it go. Taking a moment to feel the gravity that pulls you to the earth. The roots that ground you to where you sit now. The very real presence of all the benevolent beings that are desiring to connect with us as the veil continues to thin. Trusting in the very real and yet intangible feeling of what it's like to be connected to the unseen world. And as we take one final deep breath in together, we call in all of our beautiful guides and guardians of the Most High and our healed ancestors, ancestral lines, who are here with a message for us, the Leanne Aligned Collective, that want to offer us support and guidance. Thank you for helping us to see and hear with clarity that which is for us and our highest and greatest good at this time. Allowing anything that is not aligned to fall by the wayside, and to let that be enough. Taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Gratitude, returning to the room together. There is this invitation that's been coming through from the ancestral lines around musing on how far you have come. For many of us in the Leanne Aligned Collective, this year, 2024, the year of strength, has been an initiation of sorts where we have gone through trials and tribulations in the years leading up to this year, and even perhaps in this year as well. But this year particularly has been a time where we have extracted the lessons that have come with those trials and have begun to integrate that into who we are and how we be within the world. And there is this deep call from the ancestral lines right now to pause and just stop for a second. As a collective, our current generations move at an accelerated rate that is unmatched. And yet, with our accelerated rate, we are often running in circles or running on a hamster wheel, where we are moving so fast and yet not getting anywhere of substance. And when we do reach a point of substance, we don't even take time to recognize that it's there. There is a great disservice that is happening in our current generations that the ancestors want to remind us of. And that is the disservice to ourselves when we don't take time to honor our growth, our healing, our evolution, the fact that we're freaking alive. As we enter into the darker half of the year, there's often a call to look at our shadows, to slow down, and with that comes an invitation of active shedding. See, even as we enter into the darker months, nothing stops, right? Nothing happens within a vacuum. Nothing is isolated. But our ancestors this week, or whenever you are receiving this message, are inviting you to, in a sense, take a moment to freeze time. Not in an encouragement to stagnate yourself, because they're always in support of your growth, but to come back to the time-honored tradition of celebration, of recognition, of honoring with reverence the milestones that you are undergoing as not only a human being, but as a soul. As you continue along your spiritual path, there may be these moments of great growth that you don't even recognize anymore, because it has become so much part of your path, because it becomes natural. It becomes your way of living. You understand the cyclical nature of things. So it just becomes this rise and fall, this rhythm, this breaking of the ocean on the rocks, where you're just going and going and going, and you trust and you flow and you build and you grow and you shed and you rebirth yourself. And all of that is beautiful. But with that is a invitation to restore the balance of sacred ceremony, where you actually sit in communion with your ancestors, with healed versions of yourself, with your wounds, with your friends, with your family, with your cosmic beings who support you, with your guides and guardians and angels, where you sit in sacred ceremony and you celebrate the sacred act of growth, the sacred moment of death, the sacred points of initiations and lessons learned, of wisdom imparted. The invitation on the altar from them for this Samhain is to actually sit and freeze time for a second and create a ceremony that honors yourself in a way that also invites them into the equation. Because they are here to celebrate with you. They are celebrating you, but they want you to join them in that celebration. And that's what they're showing me right now. They're already celebrating you. They already have this elaborate feast laid out. They've decorated. They're in their finest etheric regalia. They're in their ceremonial dresses. They're ready for the festivities. And they almost just want to be like, hello, wake up. What are you doing? We're having a freaking party. Where you at? You're the guest of honor. You're the reason they're having the party in the first place. They are so proud of you and what you've accomplished and who you've become and what you're becoming and what you're doing, not only for yourself, but for them. Even if you don't know it, every sacred act that you take in your life, especially the ones that lead to healing, affect them too. As you heal yourself, you rewrite time. You rewrite the energetic essence of that signature within your DNA, which is connected to your ancestral strands. And when you do that, they heal too. And they can no longer do that for themselves because they are not in a body. You are. Oftentimes we think that we can't connect with our ancestors because we don't know who they are, or we don't feel worthy for some reason in connecting with them, like they are somehow on this pedestal and we just can't seem to reach them. But they're all the time waiting for you. They're waiting for you to reach out to them. They want to reach back. They don't see you as lower. They see you as their equal. And sometimes even more. Because right now, all eyes are on you, babe. You're the one carrying the torch. And they want to support you as much as they freaking can because they know how hard it is to be human sometimes. They know how hard it is to work on healing things that have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, perpetuated in these lineages that they could not fully heal for themselves, and that now affect you and them still. Healing and doing your spiritual work is a sacred act that affects everyone for the highest and greatest good. And they want to celebrate that. They want to celebrate you. All you have to do is let them in. That message feels complete. Now that we have delivered the message, let's talk about connecting with our ancestors. And everyone is going to have a completely different story around their ancestors, around their connection to their ancestors, around their lineages and their cultures. There's no way that I could speak to everyone in every single line and culture and everything. So I'm just going to share my experience, my beliefs, and some more basic overarching information that will help you kind of get your foot into the door. The most important piece of advice I can give you is to follow your inner knowing. A lot of us come from lineages that have been lost to some degree. And there are also several of us who may not even know who our actual familial lineage belongs to. You may have not been in contact with your family for any reason. You may have been born into a family that just does not want to talk about their ancestors and where they come from. You may come from a lineage where the expression of the culture or the way that your people have lived has been altered in ways that are quite frankly unfair. This is not a topic that I want to dive into, but there's any number of reasons as to why we may feel disconnected from the people that we come from, that our DNA comes from. And there are many times within which, even if we know technically who or where we come from, there is no person or authority or elder that we can turn to learn more about that, or to even claim out loud, like, I come from XYZ. And while I don't have any wisdom to impart to you on how to begin to heal from or address those things in particular, what I can speak to is my own experience of this and how we can begin to form a connection to our ancestors and our ancestral lines through our own personal practice. Now, I am not encouraging cultural appropriation here, but I am going to say that I don't see anything at this point in time wrong with exploring cultural lines that you feel called to and sitting in your own sacred practice with some of those traditions in a way that is respectful and reverent and curious, and open to being humbled and learning more about them. But I firmly believe that in our bones, we know where we come from. We can sense the people which we are connected to, who have walked before us. And there is a reason that many of us in this life are drawn to particular cultures or traditions that we may not, on the surface or on our immediate familial history, stem from. Now, there can be some question as to whether perhaps these natural draws to other traditions or cultures comes from ancestry or from past lives. I think that is something that you get to feel into for yourself. But I do want to validate the fact that, at least in my own experience and working with my own ancestors, but also helping people connect with their ancestors via the Akashic records, there are lineages that you are connected to, especially if you come from a long lineage, where there may be cultures that there may be traditions that you are connected to that are no longer present in your current presenting family because it was too far back when these traditions or lineages were woven in. What I mean by that is, we have our matriarch and our patriarchal line within our ancestry, and when we go back through time, we can only trace so far, and there are instances where there aren't records of, your ancestors a couple of hundreds of years ago, which doesn't, it sounds like a long time, but really it's not, right? Our lineage lines can span thousands of years. And as people come together and break off and reweave, there are different traditions and lineages that have come together and then split back off over time, some of which may have been lost. And when we talk about working with our healed ancestors, especially in the context of working with them as spirit guides, which is probably the most common that I see and have experience with, is some of those ancestors are quite ancient. And when they come forward to connect with us, we may feel as if we're making it up, or as if the ancestor perhaps is playing a trick on us, or perhaps we are incorrect because they may come from a culture that A, doesn't exist anymore, or B, is not in your knowledge of having been woven with your ancestral lines. But they still are there as your guides to walk with you. So you may, in fact, have ancestors that are from a Nordic tradition, or from some type of Spanish tradition, or from Native American lineages, or are from somewhere in Asia or Africa or wherever, that you don't know that you are connected to, that your family doesn't know that you're connected to, but they may be there as a guide for you because at some point along the way they were woven into the fabric of your lineage, of your network. Now, again, there is this point where this can get messy. We don't want to culturally appropriate. We don't want to all of a sudden adopt, some type of traditions that are very far removed from our current lineages publicly, but there's no reason as to why we can't explore them privately and with respect, right? So how do you actually begin to explore these things, right? I talked about like here's the connections that we can make, trusting our intuition, exploring things, but how do we actually work with this energy, especially if we don't know particularly who these people are, right? The main ways that I like to connect is through meditative journey or psychic journeying within a place like Akasha, or through divination and card work. And both of these methods I find very fruitful. However, the one that I say would feel the most supportive, I think, when you're first desiring to make this contact is actually meditation or a psychic journey, because our cards can only take us so far, right? They're really great doorways into receiving messages, and they can be very supportive in answering questions in a way that we can understand if we're familiar with our cards. The drawback to using this as a first means of communication, not that you can't, if that is the place that you need to start, please feel free to do so, but I find that the cards can be limiting. Let's say you have an ancestor who is desiring to connect with you, but you're using a deck that has nothing to do with anything about them. How are they going to show you more about themselves if there's not something that quite fits, right? It's like having a bunch of items on the table and somebody being like, pick one that represents you, and you're like, there's literally nothing on here that I even remotely resonate with, right? So there's that. We'll go back to decks in a second, but the most fruitful way is through meditation and journey. So how I like to do this is I go into a psychic meditation, however you would usually do that. I often do this at my altar. I will light a candle. I will open up the altar as the portal or the gateway to the other side. I then put my protection around me, call in my guides with a prayer. However you like to do that, you can cast a circle. And then I invite my healed ancestors. This is a distinction that you can choose to make for yourself or not. But I like to say healed ancestors because, as with people in life, right, there are people in death who still are struggling and had a very difficult time and perhaps may not, um, you may not find the relationship of connecting with them to be the most helpful for you or in your highest and greatest good. So when we use the term healed ancestor, you can also say ancestors that are desiring to connect with me for my highest and greatest good, or the highest and greatest good of all. It just helps us really get clear about who it is that we're desiring to connect with. Okay. And you can also be specific in saying, I'm calling in and desiring to connect with my healed ancestors of the Most High who serve as my guides in this life. And that will just dial it in that much more. Okay. So as you call them in, you can lead yourself through a meditation, or you can do a guided meditation like the one that I am going to provide in our Samhain celebration ritual, where you are taking a psychic journey through your inner temple or through a place in nature where then you can meet them and they can connect with you and share more about themselves, whether that be through messages they deliver, whether that be through smells or sounds or tastes that you happen to have, or whether you actually like see something about them or where they used to live, whatever it is. And this just helps you form that first connection. And then, of course, you end your meditation, you come out of your circle, you close down your altar, you thank them and send them on their way and all that. But after that first connection, this is when it becomes useful, right? To pull out your cards, to call that specific ancestor in again, to commune with them. Sometimes there will be music that will resonate with that you might call them in while you're listening to that in the car, and you can share that moment together. And as you continue to, or certain foods that you might share together, as you continue to connect with them in these mundane ways of music, of food, of working with messages through divination or signs, you will continue to form this bond, and you'll more readily recognize when they are there with you, when they are giving you advice or reaching out to you, because you have already formed this connection. And the connection isn't because they haven't always been there. It's just a way for us to intentionally connect, so that in those moments where you're asking for a sign, you can actually like recognize it as something from them. And you may also find that as you connect with them in these various ways, there might be things that you have always been drawn to for whatever reason, or that you felt a special extra connection to for whatever reason, but didn't know why. And then knowing more about and connecting more with your ancestors brings clarity in for that. I had a similar experience with a certain type of music, or a certain couple of songs, where I was always drawn to them and didn't really know why. And then I met some of my ancestral guides and was like, oh, that's why. So I invite you to approach this with an open heart, with an open mind, and to remember that part of your biggest block is often just not trusting or not feeling worthy of connecting with them. They're always there. They don't see themselves as above you. You're just different pieces to the puzzle, and they want to work with you. And if you can trust when you see something and you feel like it's from them, that it's from them, that connection will grow stronger. But if you see something and you hem and haw and you research it and you try to dig and make sure and get confirmation that this is exactly what that was, that kind of damages the relationship, because you're not trusting. Because it's going to be so unique to you and the people that you're working with. There may not be concrete answers online for you to look up. There's a certain level of trust that you need to have within yourself. And I think having a healthy dose of skepticism and curiosity and questioning is very good and necessary within this spiritual world, right? It's just like the regular world. Like, you never know, but you trust your gut, right? You trust your instincts, and you trust yourself, and you protect yourself, but you also don't hide in fear. Because the more that we close ourselves off because of fear, the less connected we can be, the more disconnected we become. It's the same with your ancestors. It is with everyday people. Now, one question that I want to address, that I anticipate, because I know it's one of those questions and expectations people have when working with ancestors or entities or anybody from kind of the other side, right, is what do you offer, right? What kind of offerings should you leave on the altar? And again, I think this is so personal to who it is that you're connecting to. And if you're working with an ancestor that you know, like someone who has recently passed, you know things about them and you know what you could offer them on the altar per se. But if you're connecting with spirits that you don't necessarily know for the first time, I find that honestly, the best offering that you can give them is your time and your presence. The act of actually sitting down to get quiet, to sit in meditation and to listen and be open is the best offering. And understand that it may take a few times. You may have to sit at your altar a few times with the request in order to really feel that connection. And it's also important as you connect with them for the first time, and take this with a grain of salt, but I think it's important when you connect with them for the first time, or at least the first few times as you're getting into a relationship with them, to not come to the altar to connect with them to get something out of it, right? We don't want to meet someone new for the first time, be like, hey, can you do me a favor? And then ghost them for the next 3 months when they do, right? It's just not, it's not nice. It's the same with forming a relationship with anyone that's on the other side. The intention that is the most fruitful is to actually build that relationship. And when you are focused on building that relationship, the offering of your time is more than enough. You can, of course, oils or incense or basic things like that are also great and very well received, but you don't need to go all out and offer them a feast when you don't even know what they like, right? Unless you are trying to petition someone for help on something specific. But again, one, that's not what this video is about, but two, that's something I might reconsider and start with the relationship first. But that's neither here nor there. Anywho. I have found working with my ancestors or forming a relationship with my ancestors to be deeply rewarding and very special. And their guidance is one that feels quite different to other guides that I have and work with, because they have this palpable presence. I think because they have been incarnate before, unlike some of our more astral guides or guardians who perhaps have not been in body or have not been in body in a long, long time. There's something about our ancestors, their energy, that feels so tangible and so grounded and so embracing almost, because they have walked the walk. They understand what it's like to literally have shoes. And to be dealing with very real issues that have to do with the human experience. And the more that I have found forming relationship with them, the more time that I spend forming relationship with them, the more I have found that my favorite way to connect with them is to just speak out loud, like you're talking to somebody. I do this a lot, either on my altar or in the car while driving, especially if I'm having a rough day. I'm like, hey guys, just help, just listen. And they do. And they'll give you signs in response back. And if you are clairaudient or clairvoyant, you might see them or hear them kind of say something, or you might get one of those smells or songs or whatever it is. But communing with your ancestors is one of those beautiful, give and take relationships. And one that, if you are feeling called to explore, is quite personal and can be quite fruitful. And if you even made it to this point in the video, they're like, let's go. You know, I delivered the message in the beginning, and we talked about, you know, my experience and my 2 cents and advice and tips. But the truth is, if you are interested enough in this topic to have watched until this point in the video, they're already reaching out to you. They're right there waiting to connect with you. If you're waiting for a sign, this is it. The ancestors are calling, my love. If you would like to sink into a ritual with your ancestors this Samhain or any time when you're watching this, there will be a link down below where you can join us for the Samhain ritual celebration. Again, this is going to be focused around the message I delivered earlier in this and a meditation and card spread to connect further with your ancestors. So even if you're watching this past Samhain, if that is still available, then you're welcome to use it as a resource for yourself. Before we close, let's take a moment to close our eyes once more, to return to our breath. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Deep breath in, deep breath out. One more time, deep breath in and a deep breath out. Thanking our guides and guardians of the Most High and our healed ancestors for joining us today. Thank you for gracing us with your wisdom, for allowing us to hear and see all that was resonating with us, all that was for us. Thank you for helping us leave the rest behind. We gently release you as we open our eyes. Thank you for joining me for today's video. Take care, my loves. I'll see you again soon. Bye.